The reason I am going down this road with literature and art as programming devices is because when I was doing the research for some of the great fires of history, I kept encountering famous authors and artists. My name is Michelle Gibson. For example, Jack London was specifically contacted to become a special correspondent for Collier's magazine and wrote an article for it entitled Story of an Eyewitness, the San Francisco Earthquake. I also found a depiction of the Great Pittsburgh Fire of 1845 illustrated by Nathaniel Currier. And this illustration of the burning of Richmond in 1865 towards the end of the Civil War by Currier and Ives. We are told the 1845 Great Fire of New York destroyed 345 buildings in the southern part of the financial district. This fire was said to confirm the effectiveness of restricting the building of wood frame structures, as areas which were rebuilt after the 1835 Great Fire of New York were of stone, masonry, iron roofs, and iron shutters. I think the great fires that have photographic and video evidence represent something else entirely. Could a regular fire have created this kind of blaze? Quoting from the section of the Jack London article for Collier's magazine I shared previously, he described it thus: "Within an hour after the earthquake shock, the smoke of San Francisco's burning was a lurid tower visible 100 miles away." Now I will look at three famous artists of the 1800s and 1900s and see what comes to the surface. Nathaniel Currier, born in 1813 and died in 1888, was an American lithographer. Lithography was a method of printing from lithographic limestone, or metal plate with a smooth surface, that was said to have been invented in 1796. At the age of 15, Nathaniel was apprenticed to the Boston printing firm of William and John Pendleton, the first successful lithographers in the United States. In 1835, he opened his own lithography shop as a sole proprietor. While initially he printed things like sheet music, handbills, and letterhead, his business very quickly took off in a new direction, and he started to create pictures of current events. Late in 1835, he issued prints of the 1835 Great Fire of New York, which took place on December 16th and 17th of that year. He also did a print illustrating the Great Fire of New York of 1845. He even ventured into political commentary, as evidenced by this 1848 lithograph called An Available Candidate, the one qualification for a Whig president, referring to either General Zachary Taylor or General Winfield Scott in the aftermath of the Mexican-American War. Interesting to note that Zachary Taylor was elected president that year, and he died in July of 1850, allegedly after consuming copious amounts of raw fruit and iced milk at a July 4th fundraising event at the Washington Monument. He became severely ill with a digestive ailment and died several days later. Sounds like there might be more to that story than that, but back to Nathaniel Currier. He was joined by bookkeeper and marketer James Ives in 1850, and the firm became known as Currier and Ives in 1857. Currier and Ives produced over the years about 7,500 images depicting further illustrations of current events, like Through to the Pacific, depicting the railroad heading to the Pacific coast in 1870, and significant historical scenes, like the landing of the Pilgrims at Plymouth in 1876, and the destruction of tea at Boston Harbor. Is it possible these lithographic prints could have been used to imprint visual historical images in people's minds? One more aside that I want to point out before moving on from Nathaniel Currier's life and works. He lived in Amesbury, Massachusetts at the time of his death. This is the Powell River in Amesbury, with its masonry banks on the top left, and the Powell River Falls at the Mill Yard in downtown Amesbury on the top right, compared with the masonry banks of the Vanta River in Helsinki, Finland on the bottom left, and falls on the Vanta River on the bottom right. These rivers and falls look the same to me, and not natural. I stumbled onto an association between Salvador Dali and Currier and Ives. Not only did he collect Currier and Ives' prints, he reinterpreted 6 of them as seen in this advertisement. This is his 1971 interpretation of Currier and Ives' American Yacht Races and Life of a Fireman. Salvador Dali was a surrealist artist, born in Figueres in the Catalonia region of Spain in 1904, and he died there in 1989. He is best known for his eccentricity and the melting watches he painted quite frequently throughout his artistic career. Surrealism was an artistic and literary movement that started in France and Belgium in 1917, and on the surface, one of its aims, we are told, was to release the creative potential of the unconscious mind by the juxtaposition of irrational images. Surrealism is also called one of the most influential cultural, artistic, and literary movements of the 20th century. It impacted art, philosophy, social theory, and political thought and practice. Beneath the surface, the founder of Surrealism, André Breton, was a dedicated Marxist. He got his start in the Dada movement, which was said to have developed in reaction to World War I by artists who rejected the logic, reason, and aestheticism of modern capitalist society, instead expressing nonsense, irrationality, and anti-capitalism protest in their works. He wrote his first of 4 Surrealism manifestos in 1924. The Surrealists sought to overthrow the oppressive rules of modern society by demolishing its backbone of rational thought by tapping into the superior reality of the subconscious mind. Salvador Dali studied at an art academy in Madrid between 1922 and 1926, and his technical mastery of skills is seen in his 1926 painting called The Basket of Bread. He was already acquainted with the Spanish surrealist Juan Miro, who painted Harlequin's Carnival in 1924. And as Dali developed his style, he became immersed in surrealism in his works of art, and in the eccentric way he lived his life. One of Salvador Dali's best-known works was from 1931 and called The Persistence of Memory. Apparently the melting watches epitomize his theory of hardness and softness, his message being that our subconscious mind is present in what we do in our daily lives and has more power over us than man-made objects of the conscious world. The Surrealists hailed his development of the paranoid, critical surrealistic technique in the 1930s, in which the artist invokes a paranoid state, said to result in the deconstruction of the concept of identity, allowing subjectivity to become the primary aspect of the artwork. Surrealism definitely seems to promote mental illness and the breakdown of society. Diego Rivera, born in 1886 and died in 1957, was a prominent Mexican painter. He started studying art in Mexico City at the age of 10, and eventually he was sponsored to study in Europe in 1907, and he did so in Madrid, as well as with the artists who gathered at La Ruche, an artist's residence in the Montparnasse area on the left bank of the Seine in Paris. At the urging of Mexico's ambassador to France, Rivera traveled to Italy in 1920 and studied its Renaissance frescoes. He returned to Mexico to become involved in the government-sponsored Mexican mural program, which involved the promotion of mural painting, generally with social or political messages said to have been part of an effort to reunify the country under the post-Mexican Revolution government. His first significant mural was in 1922. Called Creation, it is in the Bolivar Auditorium of the National Preparatory School, the oldest senior high school in Mexico. Rivera was one of the founders of the Revolutionary Union of Technical Workers, Painters, and Sculptors in 1922, and later that year he became a member of the Mexican Communist Party, as well as of its Central Committee. Also in 1922, he started a series of what became 124 frescoes at the Secretariat of Public Education in Mexico City, including in the Arsenal and the Market. In 1930, he painted a mural for the City Club of the San Francisco Stock Exchange called The Allegory of California. The San Francisco Art Institute president commissioned Rivera in 1931, and he produced the making of a fresco showing the building of a city. And in 1940, he completed the Pan American Unity detail, which is at what is now the Diego Rivera Theater in San Francisco. Between 1932 and 1933, he completed the Detroit Industry murals at the Detroit Institute of Art. There was controversy surrounding the mural Rivera painted at Rockefeller Center in New York. Called Man at the Crossroads, he began it in 1933, but it was ultimately said to have been destroyed because it depicted Lenin, and he refused to remove the portrait from the mural. He was asked to leave. An assistant took some pictures of it before it was plastered over, and Rivera recreated it later. It can be found at the Palacio de Bellas Artes in Mexico City, and is called Man, Controller of the Universe. Diego Rivera died in 1957 and was interred in a tomb at the Rotunda of Illustrious Persons in Mexico City, reserved for honoring those who have exalted the civic, national, and human values of Mexico. While there are many other artists to choose from, I'm going to end this video here with this small, yet highly informative, sample of artists to illustrate the role they played in either shaping the historical narrative and/or promoting a particular political or social agenda.